Here on the Beat 'em Ups channel, if you are subscribed, you'll know that we have video games. We have Vita games, we have Wii U games, Wii games, PlayStation 4 games, Xbox games, GameCube games, NES, SNES, 64, you name it, we got it, and it's literally all I ever talk about. In the 5 years that I've been on YouTube and the 300 videos that I've made, almost every single one has been about video games, with the exception of maybe 5 that were probably about depression or something else. It's all been about video games. But I love so much more than that. Surprising, right? That there's more to me than my love of video games. So many other things that I love, and I've never had a chance to talk about it. But this video is suggested by one of my wonderful Patreons, Ryan Hard. He wanted to know what I played other than video games, like board games, card games, stuff like that. But I wanted to take that and twist it and turn it into what do I love apart from video games in nerd culture in general. Movies, TV shows, anime, comic books, wrestling, you name it. I want to try and talk about as much of that as I can today and share some extra love with you guys. And hopefully, you guys will share your loves below, things that you like. So let's start with TV shows. I am obsessed with TV shows. That is my third love. It would go video games, YouTube, then TV shows. I have sat through so many shows multiple times. I have so many favorite shows that I love, shows that I just idolize, and shows that have me on the edge of my seat, and I just want to keep watching them for the fast-paced action. And I have shows that I fall asleep to at night because they relax me and calm me down when I'm stressed out. It's like my happy place. There's something about TV shows that I love so much more than movies or comic books or anything else that I talk about on this list. I love TV. Had to write them down because I knew I would forget some, and honestly, this is not all of them. I would be here all day if I talked about all the shows that I watch and all the shows that I love. But let's go through as many of them as I can, as fast as I can. So first up on the list of TV shows, I wrote Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, and Preacher. Now, Walking Dead, I love because I read the comic books and I really like the show. It had a great start, a really rocky middle, but it really picked up. I've never seen a TV show come back from the dead, for this lack of a better expression, good pun. The whole second season was absolute trash. It really was, and the third one wasn't much better, and I was like, well, this is a shame. I really wanted this show to be great, and the first season was decent, but it really picked back up again and got really good. So if you liked it at the start but got bored or sick of it, I don't blame you, but trust me, stick with it and it does get better. They have some really stellar episodes at about season 4, about midway through season 4, I'm pretty sure is when it starts getting better. It's either 4 or 5, but I think it's 4. Breaking Bad is what constitutes a great TV show. I feel like Breaking Bad was damn near perfect. Breaking Bad is the Ocarina of Time of TV shows. It just nailed everything that it was going for perfectly. I mean, obviously that kind of really intense, dramatic, selling drugs and blowing shit up and that kind of style of TV show isn't for everyone. People that prefer sitcoms. I mean, there are sitcoms that I believe are at Breaking Bad's level for what they do, but Breaking Bad, just in general, for what it tried to do in its genre, did it better than any other TV show tried to do in its genre. It was just a fantastic show that the entire time, edge of my seat. The writing was just perfect. It was great. And then Preacher. Preacher's a new show, actually, again based on a comic book made by AMC. So if you like Walking Dead, and maybe even if you like Breaking Bad, you might like this show. It's really out there. You need to be prepared for it. You need to know that it's not a show that takes itself seriously, but it's a show that is serious. Like, it is freaky. It is honestly unsettling, is more what it is. It's unsettling. There are parts that make me feel super uncomfortable. There are parts that can get pretty thrilling, I suppose. There's a lot of comedy to it too. The characters have really big, hilarious personalities at times. But for the most part, it is just a really cool show with a lot of really cool concepts. Again, it's based on a really awesome comic book, and it uses that comic book so well as source material, and just some crazy stuff happens. Arrested Development. Arrested Development is probably might be my favorite sitcom, as far as just, again, really, really clever and awesome writing. Jokes that start in the first episode and will be continued through the entire 4 seasons that there are. And it won't hold your hand with the jokes. It won't try and remind you what that joke is referring to. It won't give you a refresher course on what that joke means. It'll literally deliver the same joke it delivered in season 1, that unless you remember it unless you remember what happened way back in the first season, or you've been following it the entire time, you might not even get it. There are jokes that, there are new jokes in every episode that will make the casual viewer watch and laugh. But there are jokes that you can sit there, and if you're watching it with a long-time viewer of the show, they might start laughing at something that you think is just a line, just dialogue, because it's actually a hidden joke that goes all the way back to the first season. There are so many running jokes. But I love those shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Rec, Office. Those shows are hilarious, and they're the ones that I rewatch over and over again. That 70s show is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I can sit down, I've watched that through 10 times, maybe more. That's one of the ones I fall asleep to. Whenever I'm feeling stressed, I'll put on that show. If I'm editing, I'll put on that show. Because it's so, when I watch something while I try and sleep, I'm so inclined to try and watch it. Like if I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm like, oh, I wonder what's happening right now. But that 70s show, I've seen it so many times that I know what's happening and I don't need to look at it no matter what. I always know exactly what's happening in every episode, and it's so relaxing for me to fall asleep to that. Okay, I'm talking way too much. Let's wrap up I'm just gonna read off a few of these. 2.5 Men, I really liked, the first half was great. I like a lot of the older TV shows like Fresh Prince, The Nanny, if any of you have seen The Nanny, but I like both of those shows a lot. I love old stuff, obviously. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a great show, really spastic, but really fun. Scrubs is another one that I've seen through thousands of times. Seinfeld's another really clever show, and it's one of them things where, like, if you don't like Seinfeld, if you don't think Seinfeld is funny, or you think it's dumb, or you don't think it's clever, I mean, everyone to their own opinion, and that's fine. But if you don't think it's funny, if you think it's stupid, as far as it comes to TV shows and sitcoms and what's funny, I'm probably not going to take your advice, because we aren't going to click as far as like what's funny, like what we both find funny. I just see that as Seinfeld is one of the funniest and best TV shows out there. Just like Arrested Development's really great. Seinfeld is really great. The writing in that show is, people just don't get it. I don't know why some people just doesn't click with some people, why it's so funny, why it's so clever, but Seinfeld is one of the greatest TV shows, sitcoms of all time. And if you don't think that, that's fine. I mean, everyone has different opinions on stuff, but I'm probably not going to take your opinion on other TV shows. Does that make sense? Stranger Things was amazing. Netflix does some really great stuff. I love so much of what Netflix is doing. Jessica Jones was really great. I loved that first season. The second season of Daredevil was insane. I wasn't huge on the first season, but the second one was great. I do watch Game of Thrones and I do love it. I'm not batshit crazy for it like a lot of people seem to be, but it is a great show. Orange is the New Black had an amazing first 2 seasons. Sherlock is another really brilliantly written show. I'm actually rewatching it right now to get to the 4th season, which is, I haven't seen that yet. But the 3rd season in particular, in fact, the 2nd episode in the 3rd season is one of the best TV show episodes ever. Again, the writing, the pacing, everything, the story that it told, the acting, everything in that episode, it was by far, again, one of the best episodes on TV ever. If you guys haven't seen Sherlock, I highly recommend watching it. In the beginning of the series, there's some dorky, quirky moments, like a little bit cringe, not too bad, but a little bit dorky. But seriously, at the 3rd season, it just becomes something spectacular. It becomes something amazing, and I can't wait for the 4th season. If you want to go back into some old school British TV, I love old British TV. I grew up with British parents, and there was a lot of British TV in the house. I grew up with a love of Red Dwarf. For those of you that may or may not have ever heard of Red Dwarf, it was a great 80s sci-fi sitcom. It's still fantastic. I've watched through it a bunch of times. I haven't watched through it in maybe like 3 or 4 years now. I really need to sit down and go through it again. There's also new seasons now, which is crazy. I don't know where they're up to now, if they're still going with it. I haven't followed it in about a year. But that was a really great show. Mighty Boosh is a really crazy and weird show that I like a lot. Blackadder was fantastic. Monty Python was fantastic. I like Little Britain. I'm a huge Hugh Laurie fan. Actually, I love House. It's not on this list. House was a great show, mostly because of Hugh Laurie. And there was like an old British show called Fry and Laurie. He was also in Blackadder. Anything that Hugh Laurie done back in old 90s British TV shows were really cool. I used to watch MASH growing up. As far as like cartoon shows go, I've never really been big on the adult cartoon shows. There's a few that I do like. I liked Family Guy at first when it came out, but then it got way too intense for me. I don't like American Dad. I don't like a lot of those kind of TV shows. I'm just not big on like cartoons in general. We'll get to anime on this list eventually, and even then I don't really watch much anime. I don't mind it. There are some that I like. Bojack Horseman is actually really underrated and fantastic show. It starts kind of dorky again, but it gets really real. It starts dealing with a lot of like inner struggles of the characters, and it goes into depression a lot, and it gets really friggin' dark at times, and there's episode cliffhangers that'll just make your stomach sink, and it's not so much because of what's happening to the characters in the show, but it's bringing out your emotion, and it's making you feel things that you felt in the past, like situations that you've been in, especially if you deal with depression, or you've ever dealt with depression. That show will friggin' make you feel things, and it can suck at times, but it's still addictive. It's a great show. The writing gets really good near the end. But yeah, not big on cartoons. With it, like, kids shows were great. Spongebob, Fairly Odd Parents. I still need to find like a box set of Fairly Odd Parents. I've tried downloading it a few times, but I just can't find where to watch it or where to get it from. That was a really funny show that I loved when I was a kid. I would cry laughing watching Spongebob when I was younger. That's two really great cartoons. And The Simpsons. I loved The Simpsons growing up. I could still watch it now, even the new stuff. I don't watch it often, but if it's on, I'll watch it, and I don't care, new, old, Simpsons is great. Never really got into South Park. I tried. I don't like the start of South Park, the first like 2 or 3 seasons. I just don't like it. I have seen episodes recently, like I watched the Game of Thrones saga. That was the most recent thing that I've seen, and that was amazing. That was really great, and they made me want to get into South Park, but it never happened. Let's talk about movies. TV shows was the biggest part of this video, but movies. So we have Back to the Future. You guys know that. I have a ton of Back to the Future stuff hidden around here somewhere. I love Back to the Future. Favorite movies of all time. The first Back to the Future is my favorite movie of all time. I prefer that one over the other ones. The second one is great. The third one's pretty cool. I think they're all fantastic, but the first one's my favorite. The second two are great. And the second one especially, because of the way that it used the first movie, and they kept going back and forth, and that was amazing how they managed to pull that off with Marty going back and there being another Marty there. Again, I love good writing, and that really was prevalent in the second movie, but the first movie had such better writing, just because it was the first one they were making. The second and third one they tried making at the same time, so I feel like they just stretched themselves a little thinner. They did a great job for sure, but the writing wasn't as on point. Almost every single shot in Back to the Future, every single shot, every single frame had some kind of information either in the forefront or in the background that was somehow relevant to the movie. Whether it was preluding to something that was going to happen in the future, whether it was something that was like a callback to what happened in the past and earlier in the movie, or even just what was happening in the present, what was happening right in that frame. They used every frame and every shot of that movie to tell as much story as they can in the time they had, and the dialogue did the exact same thing. I swear I've seen that movie at least 20 times, and there is very, very, very few lines of dialogue in the movie that don't belong, that are just filler, that are just there to move the movie along. Every single line of dialogue has meaning, has purpose. There's a reason why it was said when it was said. Again, whether it was preluding to something, whether it was a callback to something, or whether it was integral to the story, the script was just on point. It was really, I don't know, it's a really great movie, and I really recommend sitting down and watching it again and trying to bear that in mind of what I just said, of every line being useful, every shot having something useful in it that helped build the world or build the story that it was telling. It did a really great job. I love Star Wars, I always have done. I'm not a huge fan of the prequels. Ewan McGregor and Darth Maul were the only things I liked about the prequels. But I love Star Wars. The new ones are amazing. Rogue One might be freaking my favorite Star Wars movie, which is always weird to say because it didn't even have a Jedi, or it had Jedis in it, but it didn't have like lightsabers or anything in it, so it's weird to say it's my favorite Star Wars movie, but it was so good. Maybe my favorite Star Wars movie. Maybe. I'm so partial to the initial 3, especially A New Hope. I just love I watched that one so much as a kid. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I really like the movie The Wizard. I think The Wizard is underrated. I love a lot of 80s and 90s movies. Like 80s movies have such charm that I can sit down and watch any of them, whether or not they're like good. 80s or 90s 90s movies are just amazing. Like, I'll sit down, like, recently I've been trying to watch through some that I haven't seen, and I love them, even if they're not that great. I watched Uncle Buck recently, The Great Outdoors, a couple of John Candy movies. I watched Harry and the Hendersons, and I mean, like, Harry and the Hendersons was okay, but I loved it because of what it was, because it was one of them older movies. I watched Adventures in Babysitting for the first time recently. That was great. I just love everything like that. And The Wizard is another one of them, like, road trip 80s, 90s movies that was so fun to sit down and watch. Weird Science, Trading Places, almost anything from that era, no matter what it is, no matter what genre, I just loved it. I loved little, just people going on adventures in the 90s. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that list could keep going. You know what I'm talking about. I love Die Hard, one of my favorite movies of all time. In fact, Die Hard 3 is my favorite one. I think that movie is epic. As far as like a huge adventure across New York and having to complete all these crazy challenges. I know John Cena had a movie like that called 12 Rounds, I believe. And even though it wasn't great, I loved it because it reminded me of Die Hard 3. I love stuff like that. It's just so intense. Just in a place like New York City and having all these challenges where people's lives are on the line, and John has to go and figure out all these like codes and challenges around New York City, otherwise people die. Like, I don't know, I love shit like that. I love Terminator 2, I watched that a lot when I was a kid. Groundhog Day is one of my favorite movies. Ghostbusters is one of my favorite movies. I love a lot of newer movies too, like the Marvel movies and all that stuff, but nothing really has the same charm as the older movies for me. Comic books. I used to be huge into comic books. I stopped when I left Australia because I didn't want to bring a bunch of comic books with me because they're heavy, and then I didn't want to collect them while I was here because they're heavy and I never know when I'm leaving, and like I got to think about weight when it comes to the suitcase. So I just buy Walking Dead now, really. I just keep up on that, and I keep up on, I started reading Revival recently, and I very slowly read through Preacher. Those are like the three things that I currently read. I used to read like Spider-Man and Avengers, and those are really, the last thing that I like remember really enjoying before I left Australia was like X-Men vs. Avengers was a cool little mini series, and there was a lot of things I used to read. I can't even remember all of it. I love comic books, I really do. It's just I don't have time to sit down and read. I wish I read books. I wish I honestly read books. But between video games and editing, I can never justify sitting down and reading something. But I always find time to read. As soon as the new Walking Dead comes out, I'm on it. I love Walking Dead. Anime and me, anime, I've never really been huge into anime, like proper anime anyway. Like I loved Dragon Ball Z growing up, but I mean, who didn't? I'm a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, love it to death. Dragon Ball Z, and the last half of GT was decent, but Dragon Ball Z is amazing. I haven't watched Super Dragon Ball yet. I need to get around to it. I think it's on Crunchyroll, so I really should get around to it. Avatar Aang and Avatar Korra are amazing. I know a lot of people don't consider it anime, but I mean, it's American anime. It's American style anime for me. It's great. If you haven't seen Avatar, those shows are just, if you love Dragon Ball and you haven't seen Avatar, you're really missing out because that show is amazing. Great, again, great writing, great characters, great personalities. It's funny as all hell, and it's just a great show. A lot of action, a lot of cool action. I think I preferred Korra, to be honest, over Aang, which is saying something because I loved Aang. I never really got into Naruto. I don't know why. Like, it was like a huge thing when I was in high school, but I never really got into it. And then recently I found Hunter x Hunter. My friend Super Derek introduced me to Hunter x Hunter, and I fell in love with that show. That show is amazing. I sat through all of that in like a month and watched all like 200 episodes. And if you guys haven't seen Hunter x Hunter, it is hands down the best anime I've ever seen. I mean, again, I'm very sheltered when it comes to animes, but I think it's better than Dragon Ball Z, which, you know, that, and I mean that's something serious for me because I adore Dragon Ball Z. But this is definitely better as far as its everything goes. The action is better, the story is better, the writing is better, the animation is better. Just the fact that like so much cool stuff happens, like beyond cool stuff happens in that show. Crazy, cool, awesome stuff that if you love Dragon Ball, you will love it. And they try and explain it, which is the best thing. It's not like Dragon Ball where it's like your inner key, and that's pretty much all they explain is you use your key and you find it inside you, or however it is they try and explain it. They actually try and go into the science of how it all works in Hunter x Hunter, and it's really in-depth and cool, but yeah, just some crazy over-the-top action stuff happens in that. People losing arms, blood, people exploding, people, oh man, near the end there was this really badass chick, but I'm not gonna give away too much of it, but that was a really cool show. I recommend that one for sure. So how this all actually started was Reinhardt wanted to know if I played any card games or board games or anything like that. I've never really liked board games. I mean, I have friends that love board games and they're like, let's do a board game night. And it's never really for me. I generally have fun when I actually go and do it, but it never really sounds appealing. When I was growing up, I loved card games. I played Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! I had a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. I had a bunch of Magic decks all through high school, and then for even like 3 or 4 years after high school, I was still collecting. I got more into Magic by the end of it. They're both really, really fun. The only reason why I stopped is because my friends stopped, and I didn't really have anyone to play with, and if you don't have anyone to play with, it's not really exciting. Plus, I never had the money to buy amazing decks, so I couldn't go to tournaments or anything like that. I tried going to a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments, and I got my ass kicked. So, I mean, it's really fun, especially if you have the money to make decent decks, and I do love the concept. And I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters online a lot. I think I played it with D quite a few times from D-Dave. And that's fun because you can make whatever deck you want, and I was pretty good at that, but no, I never really, as far as like physical games, never really been huge on those. And the last thing I want to talk about is wrestling, which is something that I love. I adore wrestling. I pay for the WWE Network still, and I watch a lot of wrestling while I edit. I don't mind the new stuff. I actually feel like wrestling is getting a little bit better than it has been in the last few years. Actually, now it seems to be getting a little worse again, which sucks. But there was a while there it was getting a little bit better. But it's nowhere near as good as it was back in the day. Back in the 90s, early 2000s. In fact, late 90s, early 2000s was my favorite period of time. That was obviously when I started watching it, so maybe I'm biased, but I thought that was definitely the coolest era. Even going into the mid to late 2000s, it was still holding decently well. I didn't mind it. And I mean, I've gone back and I've watched a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Shawn Michaels fan. Massive Shawn Michaels fan. He's honestly probably one of my idols. He might even be my main idol. I love that man so much. So I went back and watched pretty much his entire career, everything that I could find or get a hold of, all the way back to the Rockers. And so that led me to watching a lot of stuff back from that era as well. So I've seen a lot of the eras. I've watched through a lot of it. I haven't watched as much as I would like because there is so much wrestling. I would love to go back and watch Hulk Hogan's career. I'd like to go back and watch a lot of the things that I didn't get to see when I was younger or made time for. But I have seen a lot of the time periods, and I prefer that late 90s, early 2000s, even leading into the mid 2000s era. Just so fun. Wrestling is so good, and trying to explain wrestling to someone that doesn't get it, and they're like, it's just fake, it's fake. I don't understand how you watch that. The winner is predicted. It's so much more than that, and that's a rant for another time, but it's like, it's the politics that go behind it. It's the people that go behind it. It's the journey they go on. Because you think about it, it's actually harder to become a champion when it's rigged than it is to do it properly. Because when you do it properly, you can just be a really good wrestler and wrestle the best and be the best and win. Cool. But when you want to do it this way in WWE, you not only got to be an entertaining wrestler, you got to be a good wrestler. You got to be able to make things look good. You got to be able to act. You got to be able to be a voice of the people. You got to be able to get on camera and be appealing. Because unless you're going to sell tickets, unless you are going to be that person that people love and want to see come in the door, they're not going to make you champion. They're not going to want the face of their company being someone that doesn't sell tickets or someone that's just generally boring. You can be the best goddamn wrestler in the world, but if when you get on the mic, you are the most boring face of the company, you ain't going to make it there. So much more goes into it. Building these relationships with the crowds, with the fans, building these story arcs, building up your character, as well as proving that you are an entertaining, passionate wrestler. So much more goes into the politics. And you know, even when you do all that, you still might get screwed over when it comes time to getting the championship, or when it comes time to going for a title or getting a title shot. And then that leads to drama backstage. And if you follow all that stuff, it's a whole added, I mean, the fake soap opera that you see when you watch, I find that stuff interesting, but there is a real soap opera happening behind the scenes. And if you follow that, it gets really intense. But as far as all the behind the scenes stuff goes, the actual matches in the ring, when there is a good quality match, that's what I love. And it's getting harder and harder to find them these days, but back in the day, especially with people like Shawn Michaels, the matches were so entertaining. They just put on a show. I'll never forget that time Shawn Michaels ziplined down on the WrestleMania. That was one of my favorite moments of all time. And then WrestleManias, when he wrestled Undertaker back to back, maybe it was, I don't know when it was, but those Undertaker matches were so good and so intense. And it's not just Shawn Michaels they're heartbreaking as well, those matches, by the way. I thought for sure he would win that first time. And then the second time, I knew he was gonna win. destroyed me. But it's not just Shawn Michaels. I love Randy Orton's one of my favorites. I love Randy Orton. I love Jeff Hardy. I love Matt Hardy, but Jeff Hardy especially was one of my favorites. I stopped watching wrestling when Jeff left because Shawn had left. Randy was still there, I think, but it just wasn't enough to hold me over. Those are my 3 favorite wrestlers. I mean, there's more. I love AJ Styles now. He's doing a great job. I love a lot of the wrestlers that are wrestling now, but the old days, man. The old days. I do love wrestling, and I still watch it. Oh, Mick Foley too. Mick Foley's not sitcom. Mick Foley's TV show is really good. Holy Foley. I love watching that show. It's actually really funny and really interesting. It's like a reality show following Mick Foley's life and his incredibly hot daughter and his 3 fugly looking sons. Which, by the way, what's her name? Noelle Foley has a YouTube channel too with like, I think like 40,000 subscribers at this point right now. So I mean, if everyone went over there and told her that Wood from Beat 'em Ups sent you, maybe tweet her, tell her that Wood from Beat 'em Ups is a fan of the show, or that she should, I don't know, maybe go out for a coffee with Wood from Beat 'em Ups. That would be great if you guys could make that happen. Well guys, I think I just need to accept this video is going to be a lot longer than I wanted it to be. And if you're still watching now, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for sitting through this. And I hope you learned a little bit more about me. I had a lot of fun talking about these things. Honestly, for so many of them, I could have talked about it for longer and for more. I love making videos about video games though. It was fun doing this, but I'm already ready to talk about video games again. But let me know down below what you guys like. Maybe I like it too and I forgot to put it on this list. TV shows, movies, anime, comic books, wrestling, something completely different. What is it you're passionate about? What is it you're interested in? I hope through your comments and my video, we can get to know each other a little bit better. I hope you feel like you know me a little bit better now that I've had the chance to talk about all of this. You know I love you guys so much. If there's anything in this video you want me to dive into more detail about, let me know that down below as well. Like this video and subscribe because we become best friends. I like that. That's my new thing now. But I'll see you guys in the next video.